This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Toy Story 2 sorta lies to you. In a very clever way that I really enjoy and tells us a lot about Jessie. Yep, this video is about Jessie because I already made one about Toy Story 2 before this, where we talked about Woody and Andy and the struggle in this film between love and adoration. That's a video you can watch here, I think it's a good one, but I wanted to talk about Jessie as well. And if you don't mind, I'd like to just get on with it. So Jessie has an incredibly moving montage scene in the middle of this film. A heartbreaking story about how wonderful everything felt when she was Emily's favourite toy and they played at everything together. And then Emily got old, became interested in other things, older things. Jessie went forgotten under her bed, and then there was a brief ray of sunlight when an older Emily finally pulled her out, and when Jessie thought all of that same love and belonging was flooding back in, until she realised no, she was just being put in a box and given away. Emily had completely discarded and rejected her. That's how it felt. It makes me tear up every time, and it does make you feel slightly guilty about your own toys as a kid that you either got rid of or stuffed in an attic somewhere. However, that's not the biggest thing about this scene, and not truly what's so moving. It's not just us relating to the child Emily here and feeling guilty for our own toys. What we're really doing is relating to Jessie. We know exactly what this feeling of rejection is like, and to see it on this scale, depicted so succinctly, is just soul destroying. God, it hurts to see. But the key thing is it's also incorrect. It's even a lie. By which I mean, not only is Jessie misunderstanding this experience, although it totally makes sense why she would, but the movie itself is tricking us into misunderstanding the kind of effects this has had on Jessie.
Stop it! I look for the giant chicken!
Now, Etch! That's where I need to go.
Yeah, Squarespace are sponsoring this video. They're the all-in-one platform for building and growing your website and online business. Which of course means everything you need is all in one place. Securing the domain, designing the site, promoting it, getting paid, it can all be done here, but what's most impressive to me, I think, is how easy it is to use. Here's screen recorded footage of just the first 30 minutes of me using it when I first signed up. I didn't need to watch any tutorials, it's all just so intuitive. Add elements, drag and resize everything smoothly on a grid designed to keep things aligned properly, change colours, add pictures, and a load more stuff. You know, it's going to be a few months still before I've got my poetry collection finished and I'm ready to really finish and promote this website and start selling my writing and stuff, but when that time comes, there are a ton of other tools on Squarespace to make the site look even better. So far, I love how simple it is to put together a contact form, or even put together a shop page. So, if you want the best domain at an all-inclusive price, if you want integrated SEO tools, if you want a giant scrolling list of all the things Squarespace offer, then click the link in the description or the pinned comment for a free trial to Squarespace. And if that suits you nicely, then use the code MyLittleFortry to get 10% off purchasing your first domain or website. This is where Al's Toy Barn went wrong, you know? Get online, get a Squarespace, idiot! Okay, so the first bit of the statement I made then is fairly obvious, I think. The thing Jessie is misunderstanding is that Emily isn't donating her, or even didn't leave her beneath the bed because Jessie had been deemed worthless by Emily. She isn't rejecting Jessie exactly. It doesn't prove Jessie unwanted and unlovable, and that humans are these fickle beings who are kind of interested in you for a while, and you mistake that for love because it feels good, but ultimately they don't care and they chuck you to the trash like you're nothing. I mean, I've met people who can certainly make you feel that way, and it's certainly a very valid feeling in those experiences. It is totally understandable why Jessie feels what she does here, and why she never wants to be a child's toy again. However, it's still important to stress that Emily didn't think Jessie was worthless. In fact, that's exactly why she was donating her, because Jessie had meant so much to her. And she no doubt did still love Jessie deep down, for which she wanted Jessie to be able to give that same something to someone else now, someone who needed it. Emily had likely already internalized all of the love Jessie represented for her, and so even though she was letting her go, this toy she doesn't realize is sentient, she's still got a place in Emily's heart, and likely that's a big part of why she's able to let her go. You don't need to possess something if you can already feel it inside. This was a painful experience for Jessie, and we're going to do a bit of prediction based on what this fictional character of a toy reflects reflects of our own human experiences, okay? It was always going to be painful because I don't think Jessie has yet internalized that herself the way Woody has with Andy. The way we see Woody kind of develop a more secure attachment with Andy during this film, to the point that he accepts Andy one day will move on and will let him go, and that will be okay, because he knows Andy will still love him somewhere inside, and that Woody will still be a lovable, worthy person with innate value.
It'll be fun while it lasts. Besides, when it all ends, I'll have old Buzz Lightyear to keep me company. So long, partner.
Emily may have been ready to move on, but Jessie wasn't, and that's why it's super heartbreaking. It feels like rejection. However, in a better set of circumstances, I think Jessie would have been able to process that pain here and the grief, and out of that gradually perhaps recognise that there was a lot of Emily's love that she did internalise, and that it was okay. In a better set of circumstances, Jessie would have gone to another family again and been loved by another child, which maybe she would have been resistant to do at first, daring to let the love in again, fearing that it would only lead to more rejection, but likely the love would have broken that barrier down, and to then help her process that pain and hopefully understand the pain of rejection doesn't outweigh the warmth of love. The two aren't necessarily in conflict on an internal level. Jessie, I think, would have been okay in the end. She would have reached the same kind of conclusion Woody reaches in this film. However, that's not what happened. And this was the lie I mentioned about Jessie's montage, because it implies this experience broke Jessie. But it's not truly the pain here that breaks her, in my opinion. It's what comes after it. The bit we don't directly see. That bit where instead of another child finding Jessie in a charity shop or whatever and taking her home to be loved again, Jessie is found by Al. And he takes her and puts her into a dark box of storage where she spends the vast majority of her time for God knows how long. Years? Longer? The film doesn't dwell on the point long enough to really emphasise it, but we can see the effects this has had on her above all else.
No, can't go. No.
Jessie, look at me. I promise you'll come out of the box. Now go! Go!
I can't do storage again. I just can't.
Jessie! Jessie!
I won't go back in the dark.
I thought I'd get one last look at the sun before I get packed away again.
This is very different to her being under the bed when Emily is still there, and there are likely other toys to interact with still, and she can move around, and there's hope. There's a sense of time passing. There's an idea that Emily is still right there. Sealed in a tiny dark box for years, however, with no sense of anyone who might come along and love you. And who do you have for company there? The prospector. He tells you all the sorts of things he tells Woody in this film. He says to Jessie that Emily never really loved you, that no child will ever love you, that you're better off without them, that your only worth comes from being in pristine condition as part of an exhibit that depends entirely on Woody. Years in a dark box with only that voice beside her would crush her spirit, and it would starve all of the positives that she might have been able to internalise and take away from her experience with Emily, now in place of just that heartbreaking, bleak, potentially bitter hurt. Losing Emily undoubtedly hurt, but Al and the prospector are the reasons she wasn't able to move forwards afterwards. You know another bit that really moves me in this film? It's after Jessie gets separated from the others at the airport and she's shut in the container, and we get a quick glimpse of her when Woody opens the lid, curled up with her eyes closed. You know exactly what she'd be feeling in that moment. I find it devastating. The thing with Jessie though is that in spite of all this pain, she chooses to join Woody and go back to Andy. She trusts Woody's word without any deeper evidence when he says that Andy will love her. And why? Because she's been so desperate and starved of love for so long? Yes, that's probably a part of it, but she could have completely turned away from the idea out of bitterness and defensiveness like the prospector does. I think it's also likely because even in spite of everything storage has made her feel and the prospector has made her think, the pain of Emily's rejection probably did not outweigh the warmth of her love. Jessie does still have that glint in her heart believing she is worthy of more love, daring to seek it out again. That takes admirable courage considering what she's gone through. To not just trust Woody's word or believe in the slim idea of Andy she might have had, but even deeper, to believe in herself and her own innate value. She trusts Woody because, despite not getting the space to process it, the experience with Emily was ultimately a good one, with ultimately some positives she had internalized. She could have easily been the villain in this film. She's the one who shows her rage, who argues and fights with Woody, who very nearly causes her fear to break Woody's hope, but instead, what's so wonderful is how Woody's hope brings her up to his level rather than him falling down to hers. And that's ultimately why this trick, this lie we're led to believe, is an important one, because it shows us the struggle not so much of experiencing the pain itself, but the struggle to process it afterwards, where with the wrong support around you, you end up rejecting what you might internalize, end up sticking yourself in grief out of defense, and end up interpreting Emily as a bad person who was 100% awful and is exactly why you should never dare trust again. And, you know, Emily doesn't speak for all situations and all types of endings, but that isn't what Jessie feels deep down in this film, and it takes most of the story for her to realise she's kind of also been lying to herself. That she can think of Emily with the same sort of sad, grieving, but loving warmth in which Woody will later say, "So long, partner." Because the Prospector, he's the villain. Why? Well, if we wanted to simplify things down even more, I'd say it's because he was never loved. He spent his entire life in a box and was never bought because nobody wanted him until Al saw he had value as part of a collection. He has never known love. The only value he's been told he ever has is as part of a collection. In that sense, how the hell is he ever supposed to believe in love? How is he supposed to trust Woody's word? Of course it seems like a fool's errand to him. Illogical, impractical. When you've spent that long inside this box, watching every other toy in the shop finding loving owners, it's not just that it hurts for him, it's that his time in that box has to mean something now, has to be worth something in itself. I was never bought, not because I'm unlovable as I might feel deep down, but there's a defense. It's because I was destined for something greater. Immortality, glory, adoration. And for the Prospector to let go of that dream of joining the museum in place of joining Andy, the Prospector would first have to be accepting that he has been hurt. And that's not really a feeling he wants to face. You know what I love most about this character though? It's that, well, he does get the typical kid story villain comeuppance at the end, sure. The film gets its own back on him by giving him the thing he least wants, which is a child who will likely damage all his pristine perfection. But what I love is that whilst this is on the surface the thing he least wants and looks like a petty revenge, it's also exactly what he needs. Someone who will play with him and love him regardless of how messy she ends up making him look, that she will still love him the same. I don't think it's just a quip. I think Woody is being earnest when he tells him,
I think it's time you learn the true meaning of playtime.
And I think that's quite nice. I was going to talk more. I was going to talk a load about how he parallels Woody from film 1 with Buzz, and how Buzz mirrors Woody's experience from the first film but with another Buzz in this film, and how there's a lot of great parallels that add so much to this general theme, but I think it's better to stop here now. I feel like I've kind of concluded the general point. So, like this video if you liked it, watch the first video if you haven't, or an even older video I made on Toy Story 1, comment your thoughts, good or bad, like the video if you liked it, subscribe, maybe even support me on Patreon or buy me a coffee, but otherwise, hopefully see you next time. And as ever, a special thank you goes to Flying Spider, Kellyanne Davidson, Luke Orr, Michael Gallagher, Benry, Joshua C. Follier, and Chad Bramwell. Thank you.